Hi, everybody. Raina here from Blue Cypress Books, and welcome to Book Banter. This evening, I will be talking with Brittany N. Williams. She is a classically trained actress. She studied musical theater at Howard University and Shakespearean performance at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in London. She has also performed on 3 different continents. She's appeared in Queen Sugar and Leverage Redemption. Her short stories have been published in the Gambit Weekly, Fireside Magazine, and one of her stories was in a Star Wars anthology, From a Certain Point of View. And we are here to celebrate her debut YA novel, That Selfsame Metal. This is every theater kid or theater nerd's dream book. I had so much fun reading this. It is a Black girl who is the weapons master. She's in charge of all of the swords at Shakespeare's theater company in London. And then we find out she has magic and there are fae wandering around, and I loved every minute of it. So I'm looking forward to talking with her. And if you have any questions at all through the event, just type them in the comments and we will answer them during the event. So without further ado, welcome Brittany and Williams to to Book Banter. Hi there.
What's up? What's up? What's good?
Hey, I'm having a great time. I'm super excited to talk to you about this book and like your background and the book's background and how that all goes together. I guess like I'd like to start. My first like question is like, can you give me? I gave the sort of like my personal like elevator pitch, but what's your setup for the book?
I got you. Okay, so That Selfsame Metal follows 16-year-old Joan Sands. She has the magical ability to manipulate metal, and she only wants to use those powers to build swords and choreograph fights for William Shakespeare's acting company. But when malevolent fae invade London, she finds she's one of the few people who can keep the city safe.
Nice. I love it.
I practice it a lot.
Oh yes. That is part of your job, is to be ready. You got to be ready for that. I as I said, I love this, and I'm a theater kid from way back, and like I'm trying to stay like I'm a theater nerd, but I fall off the wagon. So I'm like, oh, I haven't really seen anything in a while. I should go look into theater, what's going on in town, and then I'll like watch every show for like a year, right? Everything I can possibly fit into my schedule, and then I'm like, oh, okay, all right, let me back up, and then I do this like my whole life since I've left school. So, but you're in it.
Yeah. I was just in 12th night with the New Orleans Shakespeare Festival. We closed a couple weekends ago. Yeah. So, and then before that, I directed A Midsummer Night's Dream for the NOLA projects that was out at the Sculpture Garden at the New Orleans Museum of Art. And then I also directed a production at the World War II Museum called Billy and Ella. And it was I also wrote it. It was a made up concert between Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald. And that just closed a couple weeks ago too. And I had to pop in as Billie Holiday for the last 2 performances, which was hilarious.
You had to?
Yeah. We the actress who had been playing Billie Holiday back last year when the show went up, and then this year again, she had another commitment. So they were like, hey, can you hop in and do these last 2 shows? And I was like, yep, sure, let's go for it.
And you know what? I can do that. I will.
I wrote it. I know it well enough.
I know these songs. That's good. Okay, so with something like that, like, did you write that first and then pitch it? Or was that like a collaborative, like they were like, hey, a show I'd like to do, could you write it?
I pitched it. They loved my pitch, and then I went off and wrote it. And we put it together. I had Harry Marone, who is a pianist and a puppeteer around here in the city. He actually did all of the musical arrangements for me, because I read music, but I don't that's not my ministry. So I just gave him the list of songs, and he arranged everything for a 3-piece band. And but they gave me kind of free reign to do what I wanted, and the show has been really well received and popular, and people loved it. And it was fun to actually like step on stage and do it and watch people enjoy my work as I like in it. It was fun.
Have you been writing plays and stuff for a long time? Or is that relatively new as well?
The theater program I did when I was in high school, it was the Arena Players Youth Theater. We would occasionally do shows where our director would have us like write pieces for it or write pieces of it. So I've been doing it since then. When I was in London, I was part of a sketch comedy group. So I wrote some stuff for that group. I wrote a one-woman show that I performed at the Infringe Festival here in New Orleans back in 2018. Yes. Right. I'm like, what is time? Time is fake. So it's all kind of like in the mix there, you know.
Well, that's fun. That's exciting. I love that your high school worked that in as well. Like I was in theater in high school, and we didn't really write. We didn't. I'm like trying to think as I'm saying it out loud. Like, did we write any of that? I have no memory of doing it, so I'm going to say we didn't. It didn't help anything.
Right.
It didn't.
So, I mean, it wasn't with my high school. It was this separate program run out of this community theater back in Baltimore where I grew up. It's called the Arena Playhouse, and it's the oldest it's the oldest continually running African-American community theater in the country. So, I had to get the order of the words.
Yeah. It's old, it's African-American, it's theater. We get it all in there. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's exciting. I did a lot of community theater in high school and in college too, but none of them I moved around. Yeah. So you just kind of like audition and take what you get wherever you get it. So you're like, okay, it's cool. And then like I jumped off of that and I went like travel. I was a travel agent for a while, and then the internet, and now I'm in books, because as soon as I got there, I was like, wait a minute, this might be where I am. This is like I've been hopping at things that I enjoy, but as soon as I found myself in a bookstore, in an indie bookstore especially, I was like, these are my people.
Yeah. And y'all have a lot of fun at Blue Cypress.
We do. We're actually taking off next week. Speaking of which, we're closed from Sunday to Thursday because it's our 15-year anniversary. So we're all going to New York City.
I know, that's right. Yeah. That's going to be so much fun.
Like, the owner, like in January, she's like, we should do something for our 15-year anniversary. She's talking to me, and I'm the event specialist. So I'm like, oh, yeah, cool. Let's plan a party, right? We're planning a party. Is that why we're, she's like, no. I mean, shut the place down and we should go somewhere. I was like, oh, that too. I'm into that too.
That's how you do it. It's like, no, a party for us.
Right. Like we can
for us.
Party later if you want, but I was like, okay, yeah, let's shut it down. So we're touring some publishers and going to all the bookstores with people where you don't have to be like, oh, I'll be done in 20 minutes. You know, no one is trying to get you out of the bookstore.
Right.
Some of us have travel buddies / family that is always like, why are we still in this?
It's like, no, this is the trip. This is the
right. This is the one where it's all day.
Right.
All day.
This is the plan.
Exactly. So, hi, this is that is my nephew saying hi, Rita. My nephew is 9. So he is a future reader of your book.
Yes.
A future
right. Yes.
So what gave you the idea for this book? Obviously it's got a lot of theater. But when did you decide this is a book I want to do?
So I've been a Shakespeare fan since I was literally in elementary school, and I used to watch Shakespeare the Animated Tales on HBO. And so with this book idea, it actually came from I was researching West African religious traditions, and I came across the Orisha, and particularly the Orisha Ogun, who is the spirit of war, of iron, and technology. And that got me thinking, I wonder what would happen if someone who was blessed by the Orisha Ogun to have the magic to control metal had to fight against the English fae, who are notoriously vulnerable to iron. And then I was like, well, if I'm writing a fae story in England, then I gotta have my Shakespeare and A Midsummer Night's Dream. So there we go. It's like all the pieces started falling together, and then I just started writing, and the words just flowed out of my fingers, and now we have a book.
Okay, so I love that origin story. That is not what I saw. What I was, if you had me guess, I never would have started there.
Yeah, I know. It's a winding road, but
right, sparks like come from wherever.
Mm-hmm.
But so that brings me though to something that I also loved about your book. Like I know a lot about Shakespeare, and I know a lot about that time period, but I don't know about a lot of African mythology. So anytime I've been reading so much about it recently, because it's popping up in books, as it should have been for years and years, because we're always reading Greek mythology and Roman mythology, and everybody knows that, and that's great. But as it starts popping up more and more in books, I'm like, okay, I don't know. I know like so little, and why, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like, I keep asking myself, like, why do I not recognizing any of this? And I noticed like back at Cameron Battle. Have you read that? That's another series that involves a lot of African mythology and folklore. And I'm reading that, and there was a book I read before that, and I can't remember what it is right now. But I'm like, is this even real? And I Google it. And so that's how that moment when I Googled, and I like, it was there, these are real God names, these are real myths. And I realized I didn't know if it was real or not. And there's so much history of it. I was, okay, Raina, you don't know. Like, this is clearly a gap in your
reasons. Like, there's a couple reasons. Like, one, a lot of these religions are still practiced today. And they tend to be closed religions. So it's very much like voodoo and hoodoo, where there are aspects of it that like practitioners will share with the public, but there are also so many more aspects that are just like kept secret within their communities, both out of just tradition and also for protection and for safety. And a lot of these traditions and these stories and these religions were stamped down by colonization.
Yeah.
So that's why we don't know them as easily as like we could spout off the story of like how Athena was born, how she like sprung from Zeus's head. Like we all know that, or, you know, all of these other stories, they don't come, they weren't fed to us the way the classical Greek and Roman stories were. So it makes sense that you don't know, like they don't come to mind or they're unfamiliar now. But that's also the reason why, like at the end of my book, I have a note where it says, if you want to learn more about the Orisha, here are a couple like resources to get you started. I don't want anybody to think that like this is an instructional manual, and like, because the version of Orisha worship that Joan and her family and their community practice in this book is mostly made up, because out of respect for a real religion that people today that I know personally practice, you know, and so
their inspiration. It's not.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I definitely encourage everybody, use the resources in the back of the book. Just start Googling all of the names of the gods and goddesses that you mentioned, and like it will just like open your mind to so many different things in the world. And it's wonderful. Like these are the rabbit holes that I go down. And anytime I read fiction, and this is clearly not historical fiction, but like fiction that mention something and then I Google it and it's real and I didn't know about it, I'm like, okay, this is part of, like, I'm being entertained and I can go down this rabbit hole to like things. I love it.
Well, like just about all of the history in this is pretty solid, and it's pretty accurate. Like my bibliography is very hefty. I did a lot of research for this, and it's more accurate than not. And there are a couple places where like I moved dates, a thing or two that didn't happen in history may happen in the book, which dramatic effect, it's historical fantasy. So, but its bones are based on truth. So you can read this, and if you like look up certain things, you'll find that they're true. So like all of the names of the actors in Shakespeare's acting company, those were all actual men and boys who were members of Shakespeare's acting company. Wow. Everyone at court just about is I think everyone at court were all people who were actually at like part of King James's court. And it's mostly the like fringe background, like Joan, her parents, those are all made up. The less royal people who we meet, most of them are all made up. Joan's brother James was a real person who was an apprentice with the acting company, and he was apprenticed to Augustine Phillips, who James is apprenticed to in the book. So there's a lot of truth in there. And if you can, if it sparks some people to research and do some looking up, I love it. I love it because I'm a research nerd.
Yeah, and when you're going along, like Shakespeare at this point is he's not a mythological character, person, like in real life. He's not. He's real, but there are questions, there are mysteries around different things. There are conspiracy theories. Like once you start getting into all that, he's mythologized in a lot of ways, and so I really like that, like dichotomy, like the mix between you've got this like actual mythology, and then you have this guy, and in your book, he writes the plays, and he's like, people look up to him, but he's also kind of just a guy in a lot of ways, and I love that too.
Yep, just a messy dude who likes to flirt and be in plays and hang out with his friends. Yeah.
So why did you decide to do that? Like you could have gone and made him like this big high character that everyone is this like afraid to be around and is looking up to and all this, but he's not. What?
Yeah, I think that we have enough versions of like enough examples of that version of Shakespeare, like this untouchable, brilliant genius who was above it all and like rose beyond his station and did this, that, and the other. And I wanted to kind of model him and the rest of the actors and the King's Men after actors that like the actors I've experienced and been around, like people who I've encountered in my work sphere. And I also wanted to lean into the type of man who would write these plays full of these dirty jokes, who wrote plays that have survived for 400 years, mostly because they are extremely entertaining. They're full of messy people with all kinds of drama. And the man who was writing, dick jokes for a mostly illiterate audience. Like I wanted that guy. And there's a story, I don't know if it's true or not, but there's a story that the King's Men were performing Richard III, and the actor Richard Burbage was playing King Richard. He was like the most famous actor of the time. And some woman saw the show and she just was so in love with Burbage that she sent a note and she was like, come to my house afterwards and I'll show you like a good time. And so Burbage was like, bet, I'm coming. He shows up at her house, sends word up that he's there, and someone sends a message back down and it says, William the Conqueror has come before Richard III, because Shakespeare got to her first. So I was like, those are the guys I want to put in. That's the vibe I want. So I tried to capture that vibe. I think I did.
Absolutely. Yeah. They have each other's backs, and they are friends and colleagues. Like I love it. And they are like this funny, fun-loving group of actors. And that is something you experience in acting when you're on TV or a movie set or a theater, especially you spend so much time with people, and you're doing this thing that is like sort of giving it your all, whether you have one line or these huge massive monologues throughout, like you are giving it your all, and there's a camaraderie in that, like
yeah, there is.
In you feel that among this theater troupe.
Yeah, and I also wanted to show like a mentor situation where the adults who are in the room aren't, they're good, they respect the kids, they understand that, like, yes, it's all fun and games, but there is a separation, and we also have a responsibility to take care of these children because they're children. And it's, it's something that being a teenager and doing a couple shows with like adults, I had those experiences where like the adults took care of me, and they, it was fun, and we had fun banter, blah, blah, blah. But it was still like, we're adults, you're children. We're going to take care of you, but don't. Yeah, I wanted it to be, you hear so many horror stories about adults interacting with children, as particularly in acting and in the theater and stuff like that. And I just wanted to show the good side. So
yeah, I definitely, like, I started acting when I was 5, so in theater, and so I definitely had that, like, all growing up, where you'd feel that, like, you knew the party was gonna happen after you left, and it would probably gonna be a different party, like, you could feel, and the older I got, the more I felt that distinction. But at the same time, I never felt left out, and never felt like any of that, because I was a kid. And I remember the first after party I went to after I turned 18, which was literally like 2 months later. It wasn't like, nothing magical happens when you turn 18, but it does, in that you're allowed to stay now. Yeah.
Right. And things are different. It's like, okay, all right. Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's like, ooh, you're not kicking me out. All right. I get to stay behind and basically hear the dick jokes and have like, it doesn't, like, most of the time that's all that changes.
Right.
So, but I saw that. And another thing that happens, like, in your book too, is that the kids, I mean, Joan is a kid, but she is also in charge of all the weapons for the whole company. So it's writing this line between like, at that time, an apprentice would be much younger than what we think of today, moving out of your house, potentially away from your parents, like becoming an adult would have happened much younger than it does now. And yet you're writing to an audience that's reading it now, who are still living with their parents, in that age is not what happens. So, like, that was really interesting. Did you think about that a lot? Like, because that they're the age they are.
So it's Joan and her brother in particular, they have the benefit of being in a financial situation where they don't have to be responsible for themselves for another few years. So I wanted to use characters that still had some like kind of comfort or cushion around them, because I was like, I'm gonna put them through the ringer, so something has to be nice. And I wanted to have them, in particular, I wanted Joan to be at an age where she wasn't being pressured to be married, but she did have some kind of autonomy. Because particularly in this period, as a woman, you went from being like your dad's property to being your husband's property. And it just, like, she's in this particular like age bracket where they're like, you can just do whatever you want. Just don't get pregnant. Don't bring shame on your name or your family. So when it's time for you to get married, we can like find you a good match. So that's what I thought about mostly. And in my research, I also found that, we always hear like, oh, in Shakespeare's time, the theater was all men. It was all men. There were no women. But there were a lot of women working behind the scenes. So handling costumes and props, collecting money at the front gates, keeping the books. Like, they were investing in the theaters. Like, there were definitely plenty of women involved. So that also kind of gave me the confidence to go ahead and be like, you know what? Joan choreographs their fights and she handles the swords. And I figured she's so good at what she does when she works with metal that that's all that she would need to have them be like, you know what? Yes, you can do that. Yes, go ahead. Handle all of our blades, because that's her, that's her special ability.
Right. That is up to that point. That is her calling in the world. One of the scenes that I think was the most emotional for me reading the book was when Joan is talking to James about having to get married. And that she has, pretty much resigned herself. There's an apprentice that works at her dad's like metal shop. Yes.
Yeah. Goldsmith shop.
Shop. And he's not good at it. Like, he's just not naturally inclined to be doing it, but he's trying. He's working hard to do it. And he's probably going to be the one to take over the shop. And she's kind of resigned herself to probably marrying him because that's the only way she'll be able to stay involved. And just like you're saying, like, the apprentice that would be her husband would be the front. Like, that's the person who would, take the customers' orders and do all of that stuff. And it would all go under his name, but she'd actually be able to work with the metal scenes, just like you're talking about with the theater.
Yeah. So, like, for Joan right now, you can help as a girl, you could help your father with his business, or you could help your husband with his business, but you couldn't, except in like very specific situations, you couldn't just freely run your own business. So she would love to take over the goldsmith shop as it stands, because her brother isn't going to be the one to take it over. It's probably going to pass to her dad's apprentice, Henry. Bless his little heart. He tries his best. So she's just, it's like either she gives up helping with the goldsmith stuff, or she can just bite the bullet and marry this dude who's, he's cute or whatever, but yeah,
he's fine. The bit where James doesn't get it because of course he doesn't have those same issues at all. Like, he's just gets to keep doing theater or whatever it is that he wants to do. And eventually he'll find somebody and that'll be fine. And he'll have way more choice in the matter. And it's not all the pressure on him to figure it out. And he can go open his own shop doing something if he wanted to. He doesn't have that feeling. And that when she's talking to him and he doesn't get it. And I was like, oh, that was when I was like, oh, that's the world.
Yeah, he means well. He loves his sister and he just wants her to be happy. So,
of course, as we do.
Yeah, but he wouldn't understand, because it's just, and how many times have, like, I know for me, I've had conversations with well-meaning family members who just don't get it. They just don't understand this or that, and I'm like, you know what? It's just,
this is not.
We'll figure it out later. And at this point, they have time. Like, Joan probably wouldn't be getting married until like her early 20s, maybe early mid 20s ish. So she still has time to make a choice, and we'll see what she decides. There's 2 more books to see what she decides. So.
And now things have changed.
Right. Things get complicated.
Right. Which I loved. I love you working in the Midsummer Night's Dream, especially. In the first time, it's like names are dropped, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, wait a minute, we're crossing the fourth wall. Like, I went from like, I am enjoying this to, oh my God, what is like, this is about to happen.
Wait a minute. That name sounds familiar. Right. So, and the characters in the book are like, wait a minute, do you mean to tell me?
Yeah, they do, because it's sneaking up on most of them as well, where it's like, no, this is not right. But then I felt like it was like, I know what was going to happen. Like, once I realized we're kind of in it, I was like, oh wait, do I know? And then of course you don't know, because you're not going to use that. I mean, you got to change it up. So
So what I wanted to do is I wanted to use that as like a springboard. But I like the idea of you know how whenever you do like a story about a real life person, or like, you know, this was inspired by true events, it's always totally different from the person in real life. Like it always, like, just for, you know, for plot's sake, for dramatic storytelling sake, everything, like, it just, things change. So I wanted it to be like that. So we have like Oberon in the play, and Oberon who is in, you know, who Joan encounters. We have Titania in the play and Titania who Joan encounters. We have Puck in the play and Puck who Joan encounters. And so it's like, it's different. I wanted there to be like, I wanted there to be a separation between the two. So it's like, the name sounds familiar, but it's not the same people.
yeah,
And
you have to relearn who they are.
Yeah. And I wanted that to throw Joan and the rest off, because it's like, you think you know what to expect, but yeah, it's totally different. You
also,
like the real world, you think you know, but you have no idea. So.
You had me Googling Shakespeare's family. So, like, yeah, which I was like, nah. But I had to go down the Google rabbit hole. Had to do it.
It's okay. It's all right. I look, I love it. I love it. It just means that it worked out on the page. And I mean, we don't know. I could be right? We don't know for real. We know, so we don't even know the day he was born. We've only like been able to extrapolate it based on when he was baptized. So there's so little that we know about William Shakespeare that I could just kind of run with it in the best way.
Exactly. And people like Shakespeare give you a glimpse into the time period in a different way too, because we assume like everybody knows everybody's birthday right now. Like, as we all get the paperwork and we all have to file whatever we have to file, right? And then you go back not that long ago and nobody thought you were going to be anybody, buddy. Yeah. So we didn't write it down.
Right. Well, most other people do have their birthdays, like when they were born, written down, but for some reason we just don't have record of that for him.
They're just like,
yeah. And so it's like, okay, there's so much that we don't know about him and his life. And in one of the books I read, it was talking about how he never sent letter. They don't have any collection of like letters that he sent home. So they assume he never, when he was living in London and his family was living up north in Stratford-upon-Avon, they assume that he never wrote to like his wife and his children, but we don't know for sure. And also, like, his wife couldn't read, so why would he write to her? And you know, stuff like that. So we just, you know, it's, if you don't have the tangible record of it, you can't really say, you can't, you don't know with any surety.
No. So. Which makes it perfect for you, because you can just fill in the gaps with whatever you want.
Yeah. So I'm just like, all right, well, you can't show me where I'm wrong. Show me your work. You can't. So boom. And then I'm like, okay, but there's fairies here. So who?
Right. So even if you do produce some sort of something at one point, it's like, okay, but then the rest of it. So
it's like, okay, it's mostly made up. Let's go.
Right. Let's just move on. Let's move past it. Okay. So you mentioned three books.
Yes.
All right.
I just turned in copy edits on book 2.
Nice.
Title, cover, release date yet to be revealed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm about to get to work drafting book 3. So
okay, so do you know where you're going?
I do. I know exactly where I'm going. I know exactly how it ends. I know. Yep, I know who makes it, who doesn't. I know all of that stuff. The only thing that I don't know is which plays I'm going to reference in book 3. I'm still working that out. So
yeah,
that's the fun part. But I know plot wise, I know where things are going.
Yeah, so that is the fun part. Once you've got the general, you know, beginning, end, and a couple of bits in the middle, then you get to play with it.
But I've known from the start. I've known.
Okay, that was my next question. Did
Yeah.
you know the whole where you wanted to go, but you could only fit this much in one book?
Yeah. So I wrote book one, and I was like, this is a trilogy. I know it is. And then my agent told me to write summaries for books 2 and 3, so we could show like the entire arc of the whole story when we took it out to publishers.
Yeah.
And that's been just incredible, because then I was able to like go back and seed some more stuff in book 1, and then seed even more in book 2, and now we're gonna wrap it all up in book 3. And it's been nice to see exactly where I'm headed, and as I've gone through and done everything. So it's just, yeah, and it's exciting to have a trilogy, because I can be as succinct and as broad as I'd like, and it's yeah,
you don't have to cut things for like, because it's only one, and you can't follow that thread anywhere, so that you get to actually like build it out the way you want to. I love that. Also, when you said you get to seed things in book 1 and 2 and on, that's good. It's like readability. Like by the time book 3 comes out, I'll be like, wait a minute, is that? And then you got to go back. You start book 1. Usually, what I do with series that I read the first one, like I started at the beginning, is I will audiobook. So when the second one comes out, I audio the first one, read the second one. And then when the third one, audio first, second, read the third one.
Yeah.
Which means in like almost every series that I've read that has audiobooks, I've read the first one like a billion times. Like that's how many times I've read the first one. And then I get to the last one, and people ask me questions about that one like a year later, and I'll be like, look, I don't know, but I can tell you all about the first one and the second one. Like I forget bits and pieces of that last one a lot of the time. For example, like Harry Potter, I've read the last one once. That's it. That was all I needed. But the first one, I've read like 8 times.
Well, you're in for a treat, because the audiobook is really good.
Nice.
It's narrated by Patricia Allison from the show Sex Education.
Okay. Yeah.
It's she does an amazing job. So it's a really good audiobook.
Well, then that's a plug for the audio, everybody. If you don't have the book yet, and you have not, you're not into the paper book, listen to the audio. They have it on Libro FM. I know, I took a look at it earlier. So we're getting to the end of our time, but I wanted to thank you very much for joining me this evening. And all of y'all, I see you watching, even though you didn't make any comments. We appreciate you watching Book Banter. And go grab yourself a copy of that self-same medal. We have signed copies at the bookstore. So you can grab it. If you grab it from our website, you'll get a signed copy. Or if you call us, or if you stop in, you'll get a signed copy. And I'm going to put that link in the comments right now. I didn't have it copied and pasted yet, but there it is. It's coming. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.